This is the all-new Renault 5 E-Tech, or Renault 5 Electric, or just Renault 5, because there is no non-electric Renault 5 anymore. Anyway, it's one of the newest, smallest and most affordable EVs on the market. Unfortunately, it's coming out at a time when demand for EVs is a little questionable. We don't know where these cars are going in the future because unfortunately all the troubles that we've had with them are still there. They still cost a lot of money. Prices have come down recently with newer and more affordable EVs, but people still think of the word expensive when they think of EVs, especially considering how much money you lose on them. Range has gone up as well, but still, if you want to drive 500 kilometers at 150 kilometers an hour, that's not going to happen. So whatever you're doing with a diesel car, you just can't get the same range with an electric car. And there's people who just don't like the way they look. I mean, Mercedes EQ models, Volkswagen ID, you know how boring they look. And most electric cars just look like appliances. The Renault 5 isn't going to solve all those issues. It's just a cute little thing. It's not its problem to solve all of the world's issues. However, I do think that this car could be the right EV for a certain type of buyer. I mean, a certain type of buyer like me. What I mean by that is that I live in the city, and that means that I don't need a lot of range. I don't drive very far. I probably drive like 50 kilometers a day maximum. I don't drive very fast in the city. And I'm not worried about running out of charge because there's always charging points around. That means that what I'm looking for is a short range, affordable, also good looking, and decently practical and decently tech and feature loaded small car. Question is, can this be that? Let's start with styling, since that's one of small cars' biggest problems. They simply don't have the size to be as impressive as bigger cars. You can't put as much money into them as you would into a bigger car to make them impressive in terms of quality and materials. So whatever you have in terms of budget and size, you just have to make do with that and make the car as good looking as possible, which Renault has done. I mean, this particular car is in the bright pop yellow, as they call it, and I think all of you buying a Renault 5 should get it in this color. That is the only right color if you ask me. And it gives this little car so much presence. I mean, it's a really small car. It's just under 4 meters in length. But because they stretched the wheelbase out and given it massive 18-inch wheels, regardless of which trim you go for, it just has a lot of presence. You park it anywhere in a supermarket next to a Polo, Fiesta, whatever, it looks special. And also you get full LED lights. So these are your indicators and running lights. These are your headlights up here. And you also have a lot of gloss black detailing. So all of these contrasting bits. This car also has a contrasting black roof, which not all of them do, but you should get because that makes your Renault 5 look more attractive. You also have some decals going on here and then this red strip. Overall, I think this is a very, very attractive looking car, especially for the size and price that it is. Let's talk about the interior now. As I said, small cars just don't have the budget to use as many exquisite materials and spend as much time on detailing as bigger cars do. So whatever they have to make the best of that. So for example, Renault has decided to use hard plastic here. It's all hard plastic, even obviously lower down, it's all scratchy hard plastics. But they figured the things that you touch and use most frequently, such as the steering wheel or the stalks or the buttons, should be of high quality, and they are. For this car's size and price point, these feel surprisingly dense, like the dampening and just how weighty they feel, and the buttons, how nice they feel to click. They feel a lot more expensive than some Mercedes models, frankly speaking. And you also have this nice bolstering on the seats. So you have part leatherette and part cloth seats. Again, they had to find a mix between. I'm sorry about that. And the AC has gone off as well. How do I turn that off? Yes. Thank you. Anyway, so you also have things like a wireless charger here. They've also gone and given you some nice colored fabric here to really lift the feel of quality in here. You also have this nice Renault 5 ambient lighting, which I try to configure individually. You can't. It only reacts to the drive mode you're in. So I'm in Eco right now. It's like this light blue. If you're in Sport, it'd be red, and some other color in some other mode. And just the overall, the chunkiness of the steering wheel. And they also haven't skimped on physical buttons. Expensive cars have decided to cut costs and go all screen, whereas smaller cars like this have plenty of physical controls. You've got your wiper stalks here, you've got indicator stalks here, you've got your wiper controls here, the drive mode selectors here. For audio, you've got this entire module coming off where you can control volume, next track, that sort of thing, instead of just putting it to the touch screen. And you've got your entire climate controls here. and even the stuff that isn't in buttons, in the form of physical buttons, can be accessed through here. So they have really thought about how to make this interior as practical as possible, instead of just saying, well, you bought a small car, so deal with it. So things like heated seats and heated steering wheel are just here all the time. You don't get rid of them regardless of which screen you're in. That means that for a small car, they have put a lot of effort, a lot of care into it, and I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the rear. I know it's a small car. I drive a small car myself, a Skoda Fabia, and they're both pretty much the same length, but somehow this just feels a lot more compact. I mean, this driver's seat is where I would sit, and I'm just 5'6", I'm not some tall guy. So this is where I would sit, a short person, and I, another short person sitting behind myself, just don't have a lot of leg room. I mean, I don't know where the space went inside this car. Also, the seats aren't raised that much up, so I can't push my feet underneath. I can't stretch out, which means that I don't have much under thigh support. I'm just sitting in this sort of upright, sort of knees high position. I can't sit normally like I would, because there's just not that much space. Also, all the quality up front has been removed from here, so you have got complete hard plastic everywhere, no soft touch anywhere whatsoever. You do, however, get rear seat pockets. That's nice. What you don't get, and I'm kind of surprised by, is that there are absolutely no amenities back here. No AC vents, no USB-C, no climate control, no heated seats. Heated seats is a bit of a luxury, but come on, no USBs. This particular car costs 36,000 euros. It's not the base model here. 36,000 euros. Not a single. Do I have an armrest here? I don't think we have an armrest either. So no armrest, no USBs, no climate control, no even air vents. That does feel kind of stingy. And also no glass roof. Not that this particular car doesn't have a glass roof. No Renault 5 can be had with glass roof, which is fine, but the problem is the headlining, while quite fancy with this sort of textured pattern, is kind of dark. So you sit inside here, even if you're a small person like me, and it just feels kind of cramped and dark in here. It doesn't feel very, kind of claustrophobic, to be honest. I just wish the headlining was lighter, or maybe the window line was lower to make the windows feel bigger, or at the very least we just had the option of a glass roof to brighten things up. Yeah, and I promise you, I'm not trying to trash talk this car, but the boot is also not all that impressive. On paper, this is supposed to be 326 liters. Now my own Fabia's boot is 330 liters, so you'd think 4 liters shouldn't make that big of a difference. Unfortunately, it just looks so much smaller. I don't know whether Renault is just measuring differently and they got a higher value because of that, or they're straight up lying, or whether Skoda was lying. It's just that in reality, if I don't know the number, it just looks a lot smaller than my Fabia's boot. So it is still a practical car. You got 5 doors, you got a boot that exists, but it's not the most practical of cars, that's for sure. I don't think Renault came to the infotainment system. So this is a 10 point something inch screen. I believe it comes as standard, and for what it is, I mean, it's a very simple system. It's not like a Tesla or a Hyundai with crazy features, but it works fast, so the responsiveness is instant basically, and it gives you all the data that you want. And crucially, in today's day and age, it's reliable, so it hasn't crashed on me. There's no bugs, there's no lagging. It just works and does what it has promised, and I think that's more than what you can ask of a small cheap car. Often cheap electrics go wrong and they go haywire, which you've seen with a lot of electric cars, with Volkswagens even, but thankfully this is a simple and easy to use and also quite attractive system. It's not cheap looking, like with a funky ghastly graphics, but also not boring. It's got the right balance between color and pop, like the color pop yellow, but at the same time has restrained itself from being too silly. So I like that. Let's quickly run through the costs, because obviously pricing matters for a small car. The base model Renault 5, I believe the Evolution model for the smallest battery, 40 kilowatt hour battery and 95 horsepower, starts just under 25,000 euros. Then there's a slightly more powerful version of the 40 kilowatt hour battery with 100 and something horsepower. And then you have this one, the Comfort Range model, whereas this is the Comfort Range model, which starts at around 28,900, so just under 29,000 euros. But this particular model has the bigger battery, the 59 kilowatt hour battery, with 150 horsepower. But then it's also the top trim, the Iconic 5 trim, whereas you also have the Techno trim below that and the Evolution trim below that. So going for the biggest battery, the most powerful motor, and the biggest trim, the most expensive trim, with all the features that this car has, the contrasting black roof and other features, the heated seats and winter package and driving package, whatever, together that amounts to around 36,000 euros. So you start at 25, it quickly goes up as you go for bigger batteries and more power and features, and now you're at 36, which sounds like a lot of money, which it is. But if you think about it, all small cars like Polos, Fabios, when fully configured, sort of end at that same figure. So considering this is electric and still costs the same and has a more special look and feel, I think 36 to the right person who can place emphasis on the specialty factor and they want an electric car could justify it. Obviously, if you don't care about those things, just want the cheapest car, you could get the base model, which still looks the same in terms of proportion, just doesn't have the same big presence that this car has with its black roof and stuff. So yeah, it is expensive, but not unlike any other small car. I mean, a new Fabia also costs you 36,000 euros fully spec'd, so what are you gonna do? I'd say it's high time I drive the car, so let's get cracking. Power on. It's also kind of weird that you have to press a power button like every other EV, especially Teslas, which has sort of become the standard. They don't require you to, power on. But for example, unfortunately the Renault does. The reversing camera is just not all that good. I mean, I have seen more expensive cars with similar quality, so I'm not going to blame this car for having a crappy camera. There are so many controls on this stalk, I just cannot figure them out. I was accidentally putting the wipers on when I wanted to put the car in drive, and I couldn't figure out how to work this radio control thingy for the music system. I mean, once you figured it out, it's fine, because once you own the car, you live with it daily and you figure it out. But if you just jump into it right away, there's just so much going on in terms of controls. I'm glad they have put physical controls, so I'm not complaining about that. It's just, if you're not used to it, if you come from a more minimalist car, Teslas and stuff, you are going to be absolutely, overwhelmed with the number of physical controls in here. The reason I think electric cars just make sense for people like me is that small cars often don't, small combustion engine cars often don't get the best technology. So they have the small engines which have to be worked hard, they don't get the best gearboxes. And so when you're driving around town, you have this small engine that you have to work hard, the gearbox isn't smooth or slick, it doesn't feel refined. But if you go for electric, any electric car feels quick, any electric car feels quiet and smooth and comfortable. There's no disparity between a Rolls-Royce Spectre or a Dacia Spring. They all have the same instant get-go, the same smooth acceleration. So I think for around town use, an electric car makes a lot of sense. You don't have to worry about range, you don't have to worry about charging because there's everywhere. You can also get the best efficiency because you're constantly braking and regenerating, so that's good. It does feel quicker than a normal Polo or a Fabia with 150 horsepower, obviously, but also it doesn't have the kick down that you get with Teslas because obviously they have so much more power. So I, having never driven any of the electric cars than Teslas, was initially a little disappointed. Is this it? Is this how quick it goes? But in reality, that's all you need. I mean, Teslas have this almost neck snapping acceleration, even like the entry-level models, whereas this feels a little more normal. So if you're a normal mom or a grandmom or a young person just learning to drive, I think this is actually what you should have. Even if Teslas seem more fun, which they are, this just the kind of power it has for its size and the acceleration, which is by the way 8 seconds from 0 to 100, it just works, and I think that's what it should be at. You think that French cars just have this really soft suspension. This doesn't. It's a kind of smallish car. It also has pretty big wheels, 18 inches on every trim, whereas a lot of small cars tend to offer smaller wheels, 14, 15, 16 inches on base models. Not with this, every version gets 18-inch wheels, and that's the trade-off for having so much presence, because Renault wanted to make every single version look good and have presence. The downside is they all have the big wheels, which make them all kind of bumpy, not uncomfortably so. I don't think it's any worse than the average small car. I just love the fact that this is an EV because I drive a Skoda Fabia and it's a great car. It fulfills all my desires. It's quick enough, it's big enough, it's quiet enough. But because it's electric and it just has an instant power, even for its little motor and a whole battery, and it has this smoothness. I mean, there's no jerkiness, there's no noise, there's no you go into the wrong gear, it's loud now, the RPMs. It's just easy. And I know that sounds kind of like, do you even like driving? Because I understand some people might think I don't like driving. I do. It's just that sometimes when you're just cruising, you just want to get from A to B, you don't care about gear shifts and sound and so on. You just want a nice relaxing experience, which this or any electric car delivers. You also have a lot of weight lower down because of the batteries, and you have big wheels and a relatively long wheelbase for such a small car, which all contribute for making this a really planted and sure-footed car. It drives around corners, around curves really well. I mean, I haven't had much time with this car, I want to be honest. This is not some objective, you should buy the Renault 5 right now kind of review. It's me, a small car owner, spending a day with this new small car and seeing whether it could be the new small car for small car people, you know. Is there anything negative to say about the car apart from the practicality and the build, that sort of thing? Well, I think it's the efficiency. So Renault claims a total efficiency, the total range of 400 kilometers for this big battery version. Now we are in winter, right? It's cold out here, it's damp, you know, it's on winter tires obviously. But right now I have an indicated range left of 150 kilometers and a total percentage of 53%. So if you think that means the total range of this car, the way I've been driving it, is 300 kilometers, which is not bad. It's just I've been driving it really, really carefully. So if I went into a sport mode, I mean, I'm by the way in eco, if I went into sport mode, I don't know how the consumption would be like. So what's my verdict on the new Renault 5 E-Tech? In my opinion, the smaller battery versions, the ones that cost 25,000 euros, are just not sensible. In my opinion, yes, the first owner could drive them just within the city, I get it. But once the second owner gets it, the third or fourth owner, you know, you just want to go somewhere. You buy a used Polo today, you could go anywhere. It might not be as nice as a Touareg, for example, but it'll still go just as far, you know. And whereas a small car, electric car today, and in 20 years, it's just not going to go as far as you might want it to go. You'll be really constrained by range. So in my opinion, if you're going to buy a small electric car, you should really get the longest range version so that in the future, 10, 15 years in the future, it still has some decent amount of range left. Not like those initial Nissan Leafs which go like 70 kilometers today, which is ridiculous. Yeah, so, but if you go for the big battery version, which this is, you suddenly don't have that affordable a car. I mean, it's no longer 25,000, it's more like 36,000, which is of course not all that inexpensive. So electric small cars, they're really for those who can afford them. So someone who needs a small car but is not constrained by budget, they're constrained by space and size at their city apartment or their office parking space. That means that electric cars are still not for everyone. So if you have a constrained budget of 25,000, you really can't get a decent car because you can't get all the equipment that this car has, you can't get the range that this car has. And so yeah, I feel like you either get the big version, which is what this is, or you just go home with a normal combustion engine cars, because it is true that electric cars are not quite there yet. They're not quite the right car for everyone, which is true, and unfortunately this car doesn't quite solve that yet.